I was the one posting, I was the one commenting, I was the one replying to people, I was in the DMs. At the same time, booking all the artists, at the same time, working on the trailers, like, every single aspect. We did everything ourselves. If you wouldn't get paid to do the job that you're doing, would you still be doing that job? And if the answer is yes, you're in the right place. You're doing the right job for you. I've been everyone at the party. I've been the DJ, I've been behind the bar, I've done the tickets at the door, I've been the bouncer, I cleaned the room after the event. I've done every single job that you could do at a party because we did it all ourselves. And I just, I'm just aware doing that, having done that, you're just aware of everything that goes on. And I have a lot of respect for every single person doing a job at an event. So you talk a lot of shit, to convince people to come, and then you make sure you overachieve and you make sure that you bring in more than you think people will expect. So, you get a couple of months to talk all that smack to get people to buy tickets, and then you get another couple of months or weeks to make sure that you exceed any expectation they might have.
Yes, we are about to talk a lot of smack and go well beyond expectations for the next hour and a half as we welcome none other than Murdock to the One More Thing podcast. Celebrating the fact that One More Thing will be hosting a takeover at his festival Rampage Open Air this summer, July the 6th to be precise, Murdock takes the time to share some very revealing insights into one of dance music culture's most thankless and stressful roles, the promoter. Everyone wants to be on the lineup. Many talented people deserve to headline the lineup. But only one type of person can really build a lineup and make it all work sustainably, responsibly, professionally, and of course commercially. With Rampage now celebrating 15 years of massive events, it's safe to say that Hans Murdock Michael is definitely one of those type of people. And having interviewed him about his music for years while I was working on UKF, I'm now very keen to find out about this whole other capacity to his craft. As we count down the days until we host the church stage at Rampage Open Air with a beautiful multi-genre and experimental lineup, I linked up with Murdock for this very, very special episode that explores the ups and downs, highs and lows, and stresses and successes of promoting one of the biggest raves in our game. I'm Dave Colombo Jenkins, and this is One More Thing. If you like what we do, please help us spread the word, support us on Patreon, like, subscribe, repost, and all that groovy stuff. But first, let's get acquainted with man like Murdock. Hans, thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, and thanks for jumping on board.
No, definitely. Yeah, we'll talk about our relationship between One More Thing and Rampage in a little while, but I had this idea of doing this Diary of a CEO podcast, but then I realized that I don't listen to the Diary of a CEO podcast, and it would be very contrived of me to do it in that way. I'd love to listen to it if I had the time. Do you have the time? Are you a podcast man? Do you listen to, because a lot of people seem to listen to a Diary of a CEO podcast. Is it on your radar?
No, I'd never actually heard of it before.
Yeah,
wow, I never heard of it before. I either listen to music or I listen to comedy. That's what I listen to. Yeah.
Yes.
I was just listening to one of Theo Vaughn's episodes of his podcast. So that's what I listen to. But aside from that, yeah, not much.
Brilliant. Music and comedy. You don't really need much more than that, really, in a way. Yeah, completely.
Food for the soul, my man.
Yes, definitely. Maybe it's just a UK thing, but everybody seems fascinated by it over here. And it's an incredibly popular podcast with loads of different people of lots of different areas, fields, disciplines of life, talking about how they became, as successful as they are. And I thought that was really appropriate for you because you've come from underground roots as a DJ and now run one of the biggest raves in our universe, in the drum and bass universe. It's renowned across the world. And you are a CEO of this organization. As much as an artist and as a DJ that you also are clearly successful at business. So do you feel like a CEO, first of all?
Well, Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. I think I've started feeling like like a CEO, because there's two of us. It's me and Christophe Darcon. We run Rampage together. He's more the production guy. He's more covering things like government support, licenses that we need, that kind of stuff. That's like sponsorships. That's all his kind of thing. He's also involved with brainstorming about which artists to book, which way to take artwork, marketing campaigns. Like he's involved in the whole spectrum of the business. I'm all about the artist, the look and feel, content, socials. That's what I'm overseeing, and we've been kind of developing the team and expanding the team in recent years. And ever since, there's actually people that are now working for Rampage, because for a very, very long time there was just only three of us.
Wow.
Me, my partner, and then we had one employee. And then it was just us, and we were just running things, the three of us. And once in a while, sometimes we had an intern or someone that jumped in part-time or whatever. But it's only been since we came out of COVID that we've had people come in to do socials, run content, help out on the marketing side, help out on the administration side of things. And now it has become kind of a company where you're like, you've got that role, and you've got to kind of oversee what goes on in the company and who's doing what, and if everyone sticks to their job description, and where there's overlapping and where there might be not enough of an overlap once in a while. So that kind of gave me the feeling like I'm actually running a company now, or co-running a company now.
Wow. So for the first 11 or so years, 12 years, like post-COVID is when you really started to develop a team. Prior to that, it was by and large three of you doing everything.
Yeah, what? Yeah. 'Cause you gotta realize that an event like a Rampage, basically everything that we make, we put into the next event. There was never really any money, any budget to get people in full time and just work for us. So we did everything ourselves. It was also kind of, I think it kind of felt like it was just the only way to really do it well, because we wanted to be in control of every single aspect. Like, I've been literally running our social media myself for 12 years. I was the one posting, I was the one commenting, I was the one replying to people, I was in the DMs. At the same time, booking all the artists, at the same time, working on the trailers, like, every single aspect, we did everything ourselves. And now with Open Air growing, we have different rampages all around Europe. There's talks about other continents. And now it has become the time to kind of step back from having an active role in the day-to-day and do more bigger picture type stuff. So it's been kind of like a natural development. But yeah, the first like 10, 12 some years, it was just us.
Wow. People wouldn't have had a clue then. So they could have been hating on social media or putting some type of flippant comment or anything, and the reply coming from the organization could well have been from you. A name
would have definitely been from me.
Wow. Wow, that gives you a real perspective, an honest perspective. Then you are right in the trenches. Then, really,
100%. Like, I knew exactly what everyone was thinking and what everyone was saying, and I was in chat groups on WhatsApp and fucking everywhere. And it's just like I was in there hiding, reading what people were saying. Oh, they didn't like that. They loved this. They want to see that. They want to hear that. So yeah,
that's bonkers. But that means, because the one thing that really kind of it terrifies me about scale and growth, and it bothers me about the way that the world works. Everything is rated on growth, isn't it? That is the metric, like gross domestic product. Everything is expected to scale up at any point, and that terrifies me. I prefer longevity, really, and I don't see that in scaling up. It's like the bigger something gets, the wobblier it is, really, unless it's got firm foundations. How do you feel about growth? Did you ever imagine that things would ever get to this size in that way?
Well, obviously not. Obviously not. I don't think anyone in this business that's been in this business for as long as we have would have expected something like this to happen. I've had a similar conversation a few times in the past, and there's a couple of things like, people always say, if you wouldn't get paid to do the job that you're doing, would you still be doing that job? And if the answer is yes, you're in the right place. You're doing the right job for you, right?
Yeah.
And that's a yes for me. And I've been doing this when there was no money in it. I was doing this 25, 30 years ago when there was no money in it. It was costing me money. It's like, if you're a fisherman, you have to pay for your fishing gear, As a DJ, as a promoter, you're basically paying to put on parties and, maybe break even, maybe, you get a couple of bucks after the night is over, and sometimes you lose money. That's all good because it's basically, what you live for, what you want to do. And then this industry completely changed in a span of like 10 years, and all of a sudden it's an actual industry. Like the EDM music industry, the bass music industry. It wasn't around 20 years ago. It just wasn't there 25 years ago. So no, I didn't expect things to grow the way they did, but it's been absolutely fascinating and exhilarating, and it's been financially rewarding, and it's kept me exciting to keep doing and keep thinking and keep evolving and keep creating. So yeah, never thought it would happen, but very glad it did.
Totally. A lot of that resonates for me as well in terms of the, would you still be doing it if you didn't get paid? And when you start your own business and you leave the security of a role at a well-known company to do that, that is when you stop getting paid. And I still carried on, and that made me realize. So that resonates with me really, really hard. If you carry on doing it, it's clear that the love is still there. Were you, when you first started DJing in I believe, late 90s, might have been the mid 90s, but that kind of era, were you a natural promoter? Did you create your own gigs instead of like going around to other promoters? You would create your own situations. Let's go back to those early.
That's basically what made me a promoter, is to create a space where I could play the music that I wanted to play. And I was playing a certain blend of drum and bass that wasn't really supported anywhere else. Like, you had, around that time, people were either very hardcore into jungle still, and jungle had turned very, very tough and rough by that time. Like, it was all like, very hard pounding amens, chopped up, the whole dread recordings era, like of the late 90s. And I had love for that, but that wasn't the end of the genre for me. That wasn't where things ended for me. That was part of the thing for me. But you had nights that didn't put on anything else besides that kind of sound. And then you had nights that were full on into the emerging neurofunk sound, that were just playing Virus and No U-Turn and that kind of stuff. And again, I have love for that sound as well, but it's part of what I like in drum and bass. So I was kind of blending all these different subgenres, and I always felt I was kind of frowned upon by the beard strokers and the naysayers that were kind of running the scene back then. So I started putting on my own events where I could play, Ronnie Size and Aphrodite and Shy FX, and I could play, I could play these like hip hop, R&B, dancehall bootlegs that were going around back in the 90s. I have a lot of love for hip hop and reggae and soul. And if someone puts a soul sample on a cool drum and bass beat, I'm all over it, But that was like, you couldn't do that in a lot of different areas in drum and bass back then. So I put on nights to just be able to play what I wanted to play and just blend in everything that I liked about the genre. And that's what started me as a promoter, just creating that space that I like for me.
Yeah, what were those gigs like? I mean, what was the very first gig that you ever held then in order to create that? What was the kind of size of crowd and stuff? Was it just you playing or friends playing with you?
So there's a couple of DJs in Belgium. There's quite a lot of DJs in Belgium that are really, really good. And there were a lot back then. So what I did was, I basically kind of what I'm still doing with the lineup now for Rampage, and also kind of reflecting what I just said about how I wanted to piece different sides of the scene together. So I'd get one guy that would be on that raga jungle type tip. I would get another guy that would play more like the neurofunk type stuff. I would play little bits of everything, and then get some younger emerging guy to start the night or close the night. And that's kind of how I tried to piece the night together. And the very first one I did was because I was part of a collective back then, and it was basically just friends, me and my friends throwing parties, and my friends were all playing electro music, and I dabbled in electro music, and we played electro mixed with Detroit techno and all Chicago house and Miami bass and early UK garage and all that kind of stuff, and everything that kind of fitted together one way or another. We played that, and I was the one always coming out during the night, and I'll play like an hour and a half of drum and bass jungle, and then people were like, we'd love to hear more of that. An hour and a half is not enough. So I kind of sidetracked and did my own thing with the drum and bass night. It was called Drum and Bass Bash, also because the whole bashment, raga, dancehall thing, that really appealed to me. Like I spent a lot of time in dancehall parties in the late 90s and then in the early 2000s, like the golden era of Jamaican dancehall, in my opinion. So yeah, it was called Drum and Bass Bash. It was held at a squat. So it was a squatted building in Antwerp that was taken over by a bunch of punks. So there was a punk collective that moved into this empty building and just started this whole cultural thing there. It's actually for a long time. After they spent about 10 years as a squat, they got rewarded a kind of official status and became an actual cultural hub. Until it got torn down a couple of years ago, but so there was already a lot of things moving back at that squat, and I started doing the drum and bass bashes there. And like the first one maybe had like 300 people, the second one had 600 people. Then I did one outdoors and had like 800-900 people, and then I started looking for venues because the squat couldn't hold it anymore, and it just kept moving from there.
Wow. So it started pretty heavy anyway. Like it started with pretty substantial numbers. This wasn't starting with like kind of 20 people and the next time 40 people turned up.
No. The first one was packed. It was just backed out, Yeah.
Wow, because I was going to ask. So I've had some experience promoting over the years, off and on. I created my own gigs back in the 90s as well and didn't promote anything. And last year I promoted a boat party. It was only 150 capacity. It was the biggest highs and the biggest lows I think I've experienced in my career. Like the times when I really didn't think I could sell any tickets at all, I almost cried myself to sleep. When the party still happened, and even though I'd lost some money, it was the thrill. And I've spoken to a lot of promoters who they're addicted to that buzz. When you've pulled off that wicked party and you put everybody together and everybody is loving it and you're loving it and everyone's in the right place at the right time, you don't care if you've lost money. You really don't. Like it's just like, go on, this is sick. I was going to ask when you first experienced that, but probably from day one. Like,
yeah, 100%. And like I've been everyone at the party. I've been the DJ. I've been behind the bar. I've done the tickets at the door. I've been the bouncer. I cleaned the room after the event. I've done every single job that you could do at a party because we did it all ourselves. And I just, I'm just aware doing that, having done that, you're just aware of everything that goes on, and you have a lot of respect, and I have a lot of respect for every single person doing a job at an event.
Yeah. Everybody plays an important role in that type.
A very important role, crucial role. Yeah.
It would take one of them away, and the balance, the alchemy of a good party, whether that's sanitation, whether that's security, whether that's bar staff or anything 100%. Like that. Yeah.
Actually, I'll tell you a quick little anecdote. One that really it caught me off guard and it really blew my mind is like we had a small window during the last stretch of COVID lockdown where it was allowed to do events, and we did the open air free party, and it was kind of designed that we could set up the whole thing in about 5-6 days because we'd already been shut down a couple of times before. Obviously the big one in 2020 where we had built up.
Well, we're going to get to that because I think that needs a separate focus because I think you guys were the worst. And we've spoken about this in another interview where you guys were the worst hit by the lockdown because of your timeliness. You were hit twice. And I know how much that really stung and was, the Rampage might not even exist to this day because of that. So we will get to that.
It was a close call. It was a close call. But then we managed to do the free party, and it was kind of like a quick one. We had it all laid out. We had it set up, and we were like, okay, we've got this much time to do this and this much time to do that. And if we do it in that space of time, they can't lock us down again. We're gonna know on Monday if we're gonna be opening doors on Friday. So that was the whole setup. And then not only us had that idea, and a couple of a techno event over there, an EDM event over there. So quite a lot of festivals started putting on similar type of things. And I heard during the weekend, that a lot of these events had problems with staff. They didn't have enough staff. People that they work with wouldn't deliver the right crew that they needed to run this and run that. And I was like, how come we don't have any of those issues? And the guy that I was talking to was one of the people that organizes staff and crew for events like ours. And he's like, you know why that is? Because we're always treated with respect. We're always paid on time. We don't have to chase anyone for anything. And that's why you have enough staff today and other events don't. And I was like, wow, it's basically karma, It's basically you're putting in you kind of give to the universe, and in order to, when you need it, you get it back, something like that. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So basically we've just done the right thing all these years. And that's why we're doing a nice event and we don't have any problems anywhere. So that was really cool. That was really cool. Brilliant. I mean, obviously I think it's a given that you treat people with respect, but not everyone feels the same way, apparently. And both me and my partner are very grassroots promoters, and we both have played every single role at an event. So I think we both have respect for everyone doing their job at an event, and that translates into everyone feeling involved and feeling part of what's going on.
Definitely. You've not lost touch with that grassroots roots, if you like, that grassroots foundation, and you haven't. So you're still completely aware of how it feels to be on the other side of things, or to be working, what it's like to see, you've seen it 360. So very much in the same way that you're doing the social media and all the other things that you mentioned earlier on as well. It's that hands-on aspect which makes sure that any sense of growth and success is really acknowledged and appreciated, because you know where it's come from, because you've been part of every single step of it in that type of way. There's not been any kind of unnatural fast tracking. It's all come from hard work, essentially, really. And being, like I said, like being down in the trenches. So let's get more of the development then. So it got up to like outdoor parties. This is still drum and bass bash. This is long before the first Rampage in 2009. So what was next then? How did it take me from drum and bass bash and those early parties then to the next?
I think the main step after that was that a lot of people that were doing festivals, radio events, they started noticing what I was doing. And then I got picked up to be the resident for Party X, and I got booked for Festival Y. And then we have a national radio station which is very supportive of alternative music, and they asked me to start a weekly radio show. So I had a drum and bass radio show on national radio over here, which was huge because we didn't have that before, and very few radios in Europe, national radio stations in Europe have just like a full-on dedicated drum and bass show. So that kind of put me into the minds and ears of a much wider audience. So I was basically playing out at that point like 4 or 5 times every week. So it's just on the road the whole time, playing out, looking for new music, and that's when, after I've done that for a couple of years, and I think drum and bass bash kind of was put on the what you call it, the slow burner for a bit. And then Venue X or Promoter Y started asking me like, look, can we think of something like a sort of concept that we can develop within our space? And then I started working on that, and I did a couple of those, and that's how I started doing Rampage. First, it was, I think the first really big one that we did was called Breakdown, which had always had 2 rooms. One room was like electro techno, and the other room was drum and bass. So I handled one room, and I basically kind of oversaw the whole marketing of the event. And then from there on, I started doing Radar, which was also part of the Radar Records thing that I started back then. And then someone asked me to do something similar at another event in Antwerp, in another event space in Antwerp. And that's where I started Rampage.
Right. So it was an accumulation of a lot of different things, including your own label, Radar Records and stuff like that then, really.
Yeah.
And this was in Tricks. So the very first one was in Tricks, wasn't it? Which I think is 1,000 capacity. So like a 20th of one day at Rampage in the Sport Palace now. Wow. So I mean, that was 2009. And 2009, when you look back at it, I don't think we appreciated it. No, maybe we did. I definitely did. I was working in magazines at the time. 2009 and that kind of era was a fucking wicked era, wasn't it, for music?
It was insane. It was incredible. 2009, 2010, up until 2012, that's definitely one of the golden eras for drum and bass. And you even if you look at flyers from back then, like all the headliners that we have today, like 70-80% of the headliners of drum and bass events these days, they've been around since that time. You know, there's the Netscott and the Camel Crookeds and the Focuses, and they all emerged around that time. So it was absolutely wicked time. There's so much good music out there. It was amazing, man.
And the dubstep as well. You had a couple of things. So it was because obviously there was the financial meltdown of 2008. So there was a lot of unsurety, and usually, like we're experiencing now, usually when there's a lot of unsurety, there's usually some amazing music because people want escapism, people want parties, they want to get away from the trappings and the struggles of the world. So you had that. You also had like the birth of kind of streaming and things like that. So YouTube was really taking off, and brands like UKF were starting. You had dubstep. You had a lot of drum and bass people were doing a lot of dubstep, and I know in the UK, certainly in the mainstream, you had people like Zane Lowe and Annie Mac really championing drum and bass hard on daytime radio, which had never really happened. A little bit over here before with Shy FX and Andy C and Shimon and stuff like that 10 years prior at the turn of the century. But this was one of the first kind of, it was the road to the first huge commercial explosion of drum and bass. And all of these elements were in place, really, weren't they? It was the perfect storm for Rampage to take place.
Well, it's interesting. You just mentioned that a lot of drum and bass artists were doing dubstep. And that was kind of like that was basically the big idea behind how I put together the lineups for the first Rampage events, because I selected artists that were mainly drum and bass artists, but were also dabbling in different styles on the side. Like we had some Focus, who obviously, especially around that time, he did a couple of house bits, he did a couple of dubstep bits. We had Danny Bird, who was very much all over that rave sound. We had Original Sin, who's done some amazing dubstep, some of the best dubstep ever made. You know, we had Drum Sound and Bassline Smith, same thing. They did some amazing dubstep. They did, they were one of the very few artists that did tracks that transitioned from dubstep to drum and bass, or I love
those tracks. I love those tracks. They're like gold dust. Even now to this day, really, those tracks are heaven sent, really. Yeah, and I remember those ones. You were specifically targeting these particular acts then.
Yeah, so I was my idea was like, there's so much going on, and the scene, the sound is so rich now. Let's get artists that are not afraid to kind of expand and take a couple of weird turns in their DJ sets, because they've got a lot of different music to play. So that was a way to stand out amidst a lot of other drum and bass events that were happening back then.
Right. And these like Rampage, it wasn't like the setup that you've got now where, you've got 2 events a year now, essentially. This was, I think, maybe even monthly. Was Rampage monthly to begin with? Or
I'd say more like maybe 2-3 monthly, something like that. I think maybe probably 4 or 5 events per year, something like that. Yeah. And then a couple of stage hostings in the summertime. We had stage hostings at Tour Festival, and Tomorrowland's been running for a long time now. That's how we kind of bridged the summer a little bit. But yeah, it was a lot more frequent than it is these days. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think the first big step up for you guys was when you moved to the Lotto Arena, I think in 2011. So that's only 3 years after launching.
Yeah.
2 years.
But the first one at Trix was 1,000 capacity. Actually, I think it was around 1,200 back then. But then we added the second room, and then it scaled up to like 1,700. And then we added the third room, and it scaled up to like 2,000. And then we did 2 nights. So we had 3,500, 4,000 people. And then we did 2 venues, and then it scaled up again. So, we were already slowly scaling up every other like 6 months.
Right.
So that step up towards Lotto Arena, which is 6,000 capacity, it wasn't that big at that point. So it kind of felt like this might be doable. We might pull this off.
What was it that drove that scaling up? Was it literally the amount of people who were interested in coming to the events, or the amount of DJs that you wanted to book, or you could just see that it had potential to have more people coming in and raving? But what was the demand? What was it that kind of pushed you to open up these other rooms and then start using other venues and making a thing of it?
A lot of it has to do with opportunity. I remember, because people don't always people are not really aware of how this works. But as a promoter, you have to ask an agent if you can book a certain DJ, and the agent will ask you for an offer. So most people think that a DJ has like a set price or set fee or a set number of conditions, but it doesn't work like that. So what you do is you tell the agent, this is what I'm willing to pay. This is what I'm willing to offer. This is the time slot we're willing to give him. This is the billing that they'll get on the flyer. And the agent will take all of this into consideration and weigh this against other offers that they get from other parties, other events, maybe on the same date or in the same area. And they'll be like, all right, we'll put this artist in that area, in that space of time, with this particular promoter, because that's the best offer that that we consider that we have on the table right now. Right. So there was a moment specifically with Chase and Status where different promoters, different venues were offering to get Chase and Status in their venue, and I was one of them. But the agent decided that the offer from another event was better than our offer. So they put Chase and Status with that particular promoter. But then that promoter turned around and told me, hey, can we link up and put all of this under a Rampage umbrella? But we'd never done an event at that event space, at that venue before. And that kind of brought me to the idea of what if we actually do that, but then add one at Trix as well. And we'll do it on Friday and Saturday, and we'll have a weekend of drum and bass and dubstep. We could do several rooms, and then basically we have a kind of like an indoor city type festival.
Wow. Okay.
That's basically just an act that we wanted to have being moved to someone outside of our organization, and then that promoter coming back to us asking to work together. And that's how these pieces tend to, line up. And that's what made us do an event that was a lot bigger than we initially scheduled or had an idea for. So that's just how that happened. And so a lot of it is just like very natural and coincidental. So yeah.
Wow. And quite a nice collaboration as well. I'm trying to think of instances where I've heard of that type of thing happening over in the UK, because you imagine, and like promoting can be incredibly ruthless. It can be incredibly cutthroat. The competition is tight. So to do that, they obviously identified in you an ability to get more of a crowd than they possibly could. They'd given a better offer. The agent was obviously more interested in their offer. Yeah. But that promoter knew deep down that you'd be able to do a better job at actually getting ravers in the building and stuff like that. Yeah. Were professional enough to admit that, and instead of losing face or losing a shitload of cash, they went to you and worked together. The power of collaboration.
Yeah. Cool, isn't it?
Yeah. That's, I mean, so that wasn't the 2011 one though. So that would have been 2010, I would imagine.
Yeah,
Then that wasn't the
more or
Lotto
less.
Arena one, right?
More or less,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay. So then the next step up from that. So I guess that showed to you that more things were possible, that there was more potential in all of this.
Yeah, and around that time, I was consulting for a number of festivals. So they came to me to ask which DJs should we book. So I was a consultant for Door Festival, for Pukkelpop Festival, for Laundry Day Festival, summer, what's it called? Summertime, yeah, I think Summertime Festival. And my current partner, Christophe Darcon, he was part of the people behind Laundry Day, and I'd been putting together lineups for Laundry Day for a number of years by then. And Laundry Day was one of the festivals in this area in Belgium and beyond Belgium with the biggest drum and bass and dubstep tents at festivals, in general. So we had like 5,000-6,000 people in the drum and bass tent, another 3,000-4,000 people in the dubstep tent. So really impressive numbers. And he'd see me put together these lineups, and he saw me do all these Rampage events. And at some point, he's like, I think we can scale this to a level that hasn't been done before. And he'd already done events at the spaces like the venues like Lotto Arena and Sports Palace, and places like that. So he had the experience and he had the connections to do that. And that's the moment that we teamed up. So 2009, 10, 11, Rampage was basically just me. But then from 2011, 12, we teamed up, and then we started doing it together. And that's when we moved to Lotto Arena.
Right. What are your memories of that first kind of stepping up to that type of level? And I guess because you're working with Christoph, there was some type of confidence then, because it was strength in numbers. Then you were working, kind of with you were starting to build a very small team there, really. So you could both cover different areas. But how did you feel stepping up? That must have been daunting, terrifying, scary, thrilling, exciting.
All of the above. Yeah. Yeah. It was. Obviously, we'd done a couple of events by then that really did decent numbers. So there was a certain level of confidence there. And I think this is also a crucial part of I don't know, maybe of being able to do this without being completely stressed out. And that's that we started with a production setup, obviously just on paper at that point, that was like kind of scaled to, let's say, 3,000 tickets sold. So we were like, all right, if we do 3,000 tickets, we can break even with this kind of production. And I'm like, okay, 3,000 tickets, that should be doable. We've done 3,000 tickets before, more or less. This should be doable. And then the idea was, if we sell more tickets, we can scale the production. We can add production. So then we started selling more tickets, and like, all right, 3,000, still a couple of weeks out. Okay. 3,500, 4,000. All right. We can add a couple of LED screens. We can add some more lasers. We can add a little bit of this, a little bit of that. All right. 4,500, heading towards 5,000 tickets. We can add a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And by the time we sold out, we had the budget for a production that just blew everyone away, because no one had seen a production like that in bass music before. It just wasn't done. No one had ever done that before. So people came into the room and they see these LED screens that go top to bottom, bottom to top. We have more moving heads, more lights in the ceiling than anyone had ever seen before, and all the way throughout the night, things keep happening. Lasers come out of nowhere, smoke cannons come out of nowhere, and just like every other hour, something else happens, and people just like, what the fuck's going on?
Wow.
And I think that was really like the turning point for Rampage, because the first thing was kind of like, it's the philosophy of, if you build it, they will come, because it's actually a fact. You do what you think people will want to come out to, what people will want to see. You set it up. You basically first you oversell it. So you talk a lot of shit, you talk a lot of shit to convince people to come, and then you make sure you overachieve and you make sure that you bring in more than you think people will expect. So, you get a couple of months to talk all that smack to get people to buy tickets, and then you get another couple of months or weeks to make sure that you exceed any expectation they might have.
Yeah.
So first, it's the 6,000 people that actually come to the event, and these 6,000 people that have their minds blown because we put up a production that no one had ever seen before. And I think everyone went home that night or that morning thinking, this was a once in a lifetime experience. And the next time we announced Rampage, I was just like, all right, we got to be there,
Yeah. You over delivered then, so there's no way.
Over delivered. That's the word. Perfect. Yeah.
People can't turn around and walk away and say, "Oh, well, yeah, that wasn't quite what it was hyped up to be." If anything, it was the other way. It's like, wow,
yes.
I wasn't expecting it to be that full on or that intense.
Yes.
So that was a success. And then how regular were the ones in the Lotto Arena then? Were you starting to reduce the amount? So kind of a less is more type of schedule then, or how did it go after that?
I think we only did like 3. So we did one, I think, every 6 months. First one around, I think, probably like February, March, around the same time that we're still doing the events at Sports Palace still. And then another one in September, October, and then another one in March again. And I think that was already the point where we said, we need to move next door. We need to move next door to Sports Palace, because both venues, people that don't know, both venues are next to one another. Yeah. And that's what we did.
And this time there wasn't such an incremental, gradual kind of. So far, everything has been a really nice kind of journey, really, hasn't it? Everything has kind of been relative to the next step. Now, this is where you had to take a bit of a leap of faith, I believe, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah.
What was that like, going from 6,000 to, I believe, 20,000, if I'm right?
Well, the total capacity of Sports Palace is 22,000, but it's seated. So the way that we use it, the max capacity is 15,000 people, 16,000 people, depending on how we put up the production. The first time we moved to Sports Palace, I think we did 12,000 tickets. So we doubled the amount of tickets that we do at Lotto Arena. And the first time we did Sports Palace, it was only one night. So it was only the Saturday. I think we did it probably like twice, just one night. And then the third time it was a weekend. It was both nights. But yeah, it was a leap of faith. And again, I got to credit my partner again, because it was basically, he was like, fuck it, let's just do it. It's like, fuck it, let's just do it. And because it worked the first time when we moved to Lotto Arena, I was like, yeah, why not? It's like if you build it, they will come spirit. Yeah. Yeah. I think if we do 3 times 6,000 tickets in a year and a half, we should be able to do 12,000 tickets once a year. And that's what we did. And we did 12,000 tickets the first year, and we sold out 15,000 tickets the next year.
Wow. What are the biggest changes that you notice when you step up to that level? What are the biggest things that you suddenly realized that you needed, or maybe changes in infrastructure, organization? Obviously, finances, a budget for an event that size has got to be a lot bigger, I would imagine, just to fill the space and the promotion and everything like that. But then the lineups would have had to have changed and things. But what were the biggest kind of changes that you noticed then when it starts to get to, crazy levels of, you're dealing with tens of thousands of people here, almost tens of thousands. You're dealing with 15,000 people or 12,000 people. That's a lot of people. There's got to be a lot more staff, all of these type of things. What were the biggest changes that you noticed that you needed to really jump on and make sure that you had nailed to execute the perfect event?
I think the most important difference between doing a smaller party and a party on the scale that we're doing them is that you have to time everything that you need to do, anything that you need to have, anyone that you need to hire. You have to time this, because if it's too late, it's going to be too late. If you do a small scale party and I don't know, you forgot to get, you need one extra guy for security. You'll find that one extra guy on the night of the party, you make a few calls and you'll find someone. Or, there's one CDJ missing, you'll find a CDJ,
Yeah.
But at an event this size, you need 50 people in security. And if you don't book them basically a year in advance, they're all taken and you don't have security. And the government will say, no security, no party, and they will revoke your license. So I think that's definitely the main thing, is that you have to do so much well in advance, because if you don't, you can kiss your party goodbye.
Yeah. There's no kind of account. You can't be slapdash. There's no last minute fixes in a situation like this.
Nope. I mean, the amount of production, even like in 2012, 13, 14, we already had very impressive production. And like, if you don't get those LED screens, those LED screens locked in time, they won't be available. You will not be able to get them, or you pay 3-4 times the amount that you normally would pay, and that will end your party as well, because if you go over budget to the extent that you just run out of money, then that's that for your event. So again, it's like every single detail is like, you need to have it in advance. Like, even like, let's say the bracelets that you get when you attend the event. Now, you do an event for 500 people and you forget about the bracelets, you'll find some other way to make that work, But if you need 15,000 bracelets, there's no other way, you have to get these printed in time, you have to get these delivered in time, they have to be distributed to the right people. You need to have the staff in place to hand them out or to put them on. You need the right equipment, and it all needs to be there. Or, even if one little link in the chain is not there, then the whole thing is bust,
Yeah. I mean, we're building up to when those links were taken out of your hands with COVID, but what were those early years? And I remember them really, really well. I've never actually got to go out to a Rampage for one reason or other. Life events have stopped me. My budget has stopped me. It just hasn't worked. But I feel part of the story because I was launching UKF.com at the time when you were, kind of scaling up in this way. I was speaking to people like Netsky, Camo and Crooked. I was speaking to people like yourself very often. And I was seeing this happen, with a couple of brands really. And it was really, really exciting. But what were, I can remember seeing the footage coming back. This was where video footage was starting to become a really big thing. And Facebook was actually fun because it wasn't clamping down on certain posts. So you could post something and people would actually see it. It was an exciting time, it was like, that kind of very, we were in a new world of rave. But what were, during that type of time, what were the loosest links in the chain? Or, when you look back and you think, oh my God, like, I wish we did it that way. Did you learn from many mistakes? Were there any points where you think, oh, wow, that was a close call or anything during those kind of early years of this level of scale?
Well, not really, actually. I don't really recall looking back at things we did or didn't do and be like, I wish we hadn't done that, or I wish we did that, or I don't.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's not always been smooth sailing, I guess. But I don't think we ever had a situation where we're like, fuck, we didn't think of this, or we didn't call that guy, or forgot to do that. And I think on the one hand, my partner was already way too experienced to run into surprises like that. And I think we all we're so into it. Again, like I said earlier, we were doing every aspect of the event ourselves. So we were so much on top of everything. And it was all consuming as well, because it's really 24/7. It's all we did. It's all we thought about. It's all we were doing. So yeah, no, I don't think there's anything like that I can recall.
That's brilliant. And I think, it used to surprise me. I've heard it so many times off lots of different promoters, and I think it does surprise anybody who's just getting into this, is just how early the preparation for the next event starts. Pretty much the minute you pack down, you're already, if not, you haven't already, you might already have the lineup for the next one already in your mind and already things in place for the next one. Like the event, the minute the rave stops, like with festival season, the minute that festival's over, the team might take a little break, but then bang, you're straight on to the next one. And like this is, all of the kind of prepping and organization and everything that goes into it happens almost a year before the next event, really, doesn't it?
Even longer. Wow. I mean, let's say, Justin Bieber or Beyonce or Madonna, they will know their tour schedule 2-3 years ahead of time, right? Wow. So they'll have plans for album releases and tour schedules, and their world tour will take fucking a year and a half. So they'll have dates around the world, including at Sports Palace, 2-3 years from now. So if we don't claim our date 2-3 years from now, it will be taken. So we have dates going into 2027. And wow. sometimes they change, because sometimes the venue owner, they'll call us and they'll be like, look, Justin Bieber wants your date. Can we switch it to another weekend? We have this weekend available. And then we're like, all right, it's not like we're going to have a choice, because they're going to do Justin Bieber anyway. So they're either kicking us out or we're happy with the other date that they're offering us. But that's how that works. So we have to stay on top of that years in advance, or we just don't have a date. And that's that for the party, Wow. It's not really another venue we can just go to just like that. No, yeah. I guess that's another thing when you scale up to that size. It's like when, you see people on the career ladder, and the higher up the career ladder you get, the less options for other jobs there are, because you're so skilled and stuff like that there are less places. So unless you took Rampage into a field and did an open air one as well, which I guess is when, kind of that started to, a second Rampage started to come onto the calendar, kind of moving quite a few years now into the 2010s. What was the next kind of scaling up? Was it open air, or was there other steps towards that? So the double date for the indoor one, going from 1 night to 2 nights, that was a big one. And we noticed that as soon as we announced that was a double date, like a weekender, it was kind of like the little push that people from a little bit further away than where we are, that they needed to come down, because let's say you travel down to Antwerp from, let's say, Barcelona or Athens or Poland or wherever. Are you gonna do that for 1 night? Maybe not. Are you gonna do that for 2 nights? More likely. So we saw a lot of growth in the numbers a little further away. Most of the people from at Rampage are from Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, and France. But ever since we doubled, we went to the double header. A lot more people from Eastern Europe, South Europe, North Europe, UK started coming into the party. So that was a big step up. And then obviously the next one was adding Rampage Open Air, and that was always kind of a little bit on the horizon for us, because the kind of people that we attract at Rampage, going to a summer festival, it's a much more natural, organic experience than going to a winter festival. Everyone's already been to a summer festival, any summer festival, and everyone's already camped out at a festival. That's just everyone can figure that out in their mind. You go to a festival, and those are the steps you need to take. That's your travel. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. But going to an event like Rampage, for a lot of people, it's a first. Traveling abroad, booking a hotel, navigating around the system, figuring out when to go where and how to do what. And so it's a bigger step for a lot of people than going to a summer festival. So we always kind of had the big advantage with Rampage, I think Let It Roll winter kind of has the same, we'll probably say the same thing, is that there's not a lot going on that time of year. So summer festivals, obviously, the diary is packed. There's a lot of choice. There are a lot of different options. But in January, February, March, there's not that much to do. There's a couple of local events, there's club shows, all that. But really festival type event where you get your mind blown, you don't have that many options. So it's very cool. Also, it's a very good time of the year to book big acts, because their diary will be wide open. Whereas in summertime, it's a whole different ball game, because they're very busy in the summertime. So that's an advantage I think we always have with Rampage, just being in that time of the year. But again, Rampage Open Air, it's always like, everyone that we draw into Sports Palace, it will be a much more natural situation for them to just go to an open air one, which showed as soon as we started with, because people, it's just like, obviously this is how this works. We get a lot of questions in our info box, in our DMs about the winter one. We get less for the open air one, even if there's more people coming there.
Yeah. People know a festival. That's it. There are certain things, even though when you want to create a unique experience, there are certain things that you're always going to deal with, and people just know by now really what to expect from a kind of outdoor festival. But that's a really interesting point in terms of the competition during festival time for you as a promoter is a hell of a lot harder then, in order to make sure that you guarantee those ticket sales that you need in order to exist. Festivals, at the moment, in fact, no, I was going to start talking about the current climate for festivals, because that's changed hugely just in the years that you set up open air, has changed hugely. But obviously we're kind of building up to 2020, which is when I think the idea of booking dates for 2027, like you just mentioned, was very far from your mind. I still remember the day when that lineup was announced, because the lineup was so insane and epic. 2020 was going to be the big one. And it was whipped away from all of us. But because you were a winter event, all of those benefits of being a winter event suddenly came back and kicked you in the ass, didn't they?
Yep, they sure did.
And that was literally, you announced it. And then what was the time scale on this? Because I know that this was, and sorry, I don't know how triggering this is for you, because this is a traumatic experience
I'm very much over it, man. I'm very much over it. Yeah, I'm very much over it. And it was a very, very weird ride. But in all honesty, because of the timeline that week, literally that week, because everything happened in that same week. On Monday that week, there wasn't even an issue. On Tuesday, it was red alert. On Wednesday, it was total lockdown. Basically, that's how it went. It went from people going, no, it's fine. Nothing going on. Maybe we'll take a little bit of precaution left and right, but it's fine. Don't panic. The next day, it was like, fuck. That's how that week evolved, and we were like, all right, this is not gonna happen. We were like days ahead of the event. We were like, this is not going to happen.
And by this stage, you had all of the production team going in and setting up.
And we kept building because we're like, on the off chance that it's still going to happen, what are we going to do? Not do the event? Be like, too bad. Go right down already. Imagine that. So it was very double-edged sword, that whole situation. But the stress levels were to such an extent that week that by the time that it was called off, it kind of felt like a relief. Very strangely, I looked back a while back. I had to look at footage also for the 15 years thing. I had to look back at some footage, and I looked back at the footage of someone from the radio station that came over to have a look at the production being built up. And this was on the Saturday or the Sunday before the event. We were building. No. This was the day that the event got canceled. This was the day the event got canceled, probably on the Wednesday or the Thursday. And they came over kind of like, let's show people what they're not going to get. So we did the whole walk around, and I see myself laughing on that video. I'm talking and I'm laughing, and I'm like, that's really how I felt, It was like the buildup was so stressful, and the idea that we had to fight against something that we didn't have any control over. As soon as that came to a halt and a decision was made, it felt like such a relief.
It was out of your hands.
It was out of our hands. Yeah. It was out of our minds. It wasn't a worry anymore. We had to start thinking about the future. We had so much stuff to deal with. people traveling, hotels being booked, artists being rescheduled, new dates at sports pals, because at that time we thought this is going to last for 2 months and we're back in business, So we started rescheduling for May, rescheduling for September, rescheduling for December, rescheduled that thing 5-6 times, So it was just work. And the stress of what's going to happen, that had fallen off our shoulders. So it was a very, very weird couple of emotions going on there.
Wow. I mean, surely in the back of your mind, or would insurance cover the financial loss? Because I mean, to have the production, to pay deposits for all the DJs and pay for their flights and stuff like that. Surely, when we're talking about the buzzer being a promoter, even when you've lost a bit of money, but if you can't pull that party off, and this must be 6 figures, because that's, just the practicality of running.
It's 7 figures.
Seven figures. Wow. I mean, even, and you're a small team of 3, the actual owners there, like that was that in your mind? Or did you just think, look, that will all get cleared up in due course? That will all buy insurance or buy.
So first of all, there is no insurance for a thing like that. So there is no insurance for a thing like that. Okay. First off, so there's no insurance. So, because people kind of assume like you can basically insure anything, right? But first of all, epidemics and acts of God and stuff like that, those are clauses in insurance contracts, and if something like that happens, they're allowed to take their hands off it, and they don't have to intervene. We managed to get a certain part of the production insured, so we had. I don't remember the exact figures, but I think it was something like. In a case that this or that happens, you get about 30% or of half of the production costs. You can get that insured, and that's after the insurance company reviews every single invoice and every single document and decides that they're all right. And so in the end, I think about that we managed to get some insurance, and that got us maybe 50 or 60K. Which at that time, you'll take anything, so that, I mean, it's better than nothing. The main thing that saved us was the government. I think even with the European government saying, if you have an event, you have to reschedule, and you reschedule within a reasonable amount of time, and you present a program, a lineup, or whatever you're doing that's comparable or at least worthy to what you originally were going to put on, you don't have to give people their money back for the tickets.
Right.
So people, the event was sold out, so we had money in the bank, and we used that money to pay everyone that worked for us. We paid all the artists, we paid everyone building up and tearing down we paid the event, the venue. So we had the money to pay everyone. If we had to also return people's money, that if people wanted to get their money back for tickets, that would be, bankruptcy instantly, because we already spent that money. But the government said we didn't have to. And about 95% of the people that had tickets were like, we'll wait this out.
Yep.
Some people said, we want our money back. We'll take, we'll go for the sure shot, and we want our money back. And we're like, sorry, we're not going to do that, because if we do it for one, we have to do it for everyone, and it's impossible. So a couple of people weren't that happy, but at the end, what are you going to do? It's not much you can. We just tried to explain it as often as we can, as clearly as we could. And most of the community just stood by us and just waited it out with us. And then 2 years later, we managed to come back, and everyone was happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, but what you did, one of the comebacks that you did, that was also affected by the lockdowns as well, wasn't it? So because you were earliest at the start as a winter festival, then you were one of the first to come back after the lockdowns. And I think there was a situation then with one of the first return events, wasn't there? And I don't know if it was the end of 2020 or 2021. It all feels like a bit of a blur now. It feels like it feels like another world. Like we were all just on another planet for a little while, living a very different life. But I think one of the comeback events was also because of the calendar and because you were the first out of the doors for this to happen to you, were one of the first comeback events. There was another situation, wasn't there, where it was...
it was December 2021, December 2021. And we had rescheduled 4 times by then. So that was the 4th or the 5th reschedule. But it was the first one that we actually announced. So we rescheduled behind the scenes, hoping for a window, but then, going into like 1 or 2 months before the date that we had, we noticed, this is never going to happen. The world is still in complete turmoil. People are dying. There's no cure. There's protests. There's, all this shit going on. It's not going to happen. So we moved it again and again and again. And then December, it opened up in the summer of 2021, started opening up. But then by October, November 2021, there was, another rise in cases, another variant going around, and then we're like, okay, we're going to shut everything down. And we had announced that the December 21 date, we'd started throwing money at marketing again because we needed people to know. Because obviously people had tickets, but you needed to put people on high alert because they still had to book travel, hotels, and we started to spend money again. To make everything happen. And then we got shut down like 3 weeks before our date. It got shut down again. That wasn't 7 figures. It's probably like 6 figures up, down the drain. All that insurance money down the drain.
I mean, it's great that you have managed to find a way back, and there's so many promoters have been able to find a way back. And in a moment, we'll kind of address the current challenges that you face as a promoter. But what's beautiful about those 2 years, one was the streaming culture. And I think Rampage really kind of kicked that off with this amazing stream with like Pendulum and Koden. And I mean, it was like that compared to what you were trying to pull off. There's nothing, but there was this real buzz. It was one of the first big streams. And it kickstarted this culture, and I, like being right in the thick of it on online culture and reporting on loads of it on UKF. I had this weekly thing reporting on all of these things that the community were doing. It's amazing to hear that all of the fans, or 95% of the fans, were like, no, keep the ticket money. We understand, like, we'll wait until, we're all in this weird situation. I think it's a testament to, by and large, most drum and bass fans in the community globally are pretty sound and supportive and empathetic people who understand and wanting to get behind artists. People were setting up Patreons, setting up band camps and stuff, running out merch. Like any which way people could support their favorite artists, they were. And I still look back on that aspect of it all. There was some horribleness all around that time. And a lot of people, DJs and artists who would have like mortgages and finance deals on their car and stuff, and they thought that they would never run out of a regular source of income. And they've been doing it for decades and stuff. Were suddenly like, oh God, I know a couple of people who went back to like working in supermarkets, or went, like talking to Audio the other day, went back to being a bricklayer for a couple of years. This was the reality, but the silver lining was that the community around it still really supportive and understanding and wanted to help each other out. And I look back on that fondly. I think it was testament, we won't have that again in our lifetime. I fucking hope not anyway. But that specialness that we shared as a community, without sounding like a stupid hippie, was real, wasn't it? And you must have seen that firsthand. And again, like being the hands-on guy on the social media and stuff like that, right on the firing end of any complaints that you might have. And tensions were high, patience was short for a lot of people who were living on their own, and they were, we were all isolated. That was a good thing, wasn't it? That positive energy shared amongst the community was a very nice silver lining, I think. That must have been a relief for you. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of support poured in. A lot of good stuff was being said back then on socials. So it was really, honestly, it was heartwarming. And you mentioned the stream that we did, and it's funny. I never looked at it that way. You saying that Kickstarter was one of the first big streams, and I never really looked at it that way. The reason that we did that stream was because Pendulum offered to host a stream and set it up. Because a lot of the artists that we book are from the UK. So Pendulum, Coven, who else is there? Delta Heavy,
I can't remember now, but it was the Pendulum and the Koden ones that I remember watching.
Yeah, it was at their studio. It was Rob Swire saying, let's do a live stream here, get some artists in, let's do a live stream. And I mean, that's really cool, especially coming from someone like him. Rob Swire is a pretty elusive guy, He's very private guy. And so for them to open up their studio, all three of them being there as well, it's it's rare that things like that happen. So it was really cool. It felt like scene coming together, and that was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. So back to the future now, and it's a different climate altogether. We've had the cost of living crisis. There's all sorts of horrible world events going on. Everybody, I think, is more skint than they ever have been. Competition seems harder. Everything, the profit margins to be made on anything seem tighter than ever. Certainly in the UK, we're seeing festivals kind of dying in their tens this year. Like it's scary. Promoters are also experiencing that in venues. I don't know if it's quite as challenging on the continent. I hope it's not. But the climate again now, we're in a whole other world. After that kind of initial comeback after lockdown where everybody was, really just happy to be out and about and seeing friends and stuff, the audiences are different. Like a whole little generation of what would be ravers, didn't get to rave when they were 17, 18 because they were locked inside. So they found other things that they're interested in. We're into a whole other generation of ravers and stuff, but the climate, the demographic and the challenges have changed once again now as we're kind of in the middle of the 2020s now, aren't we?
I agree. Yeah, lots has changed, and we'll see how it pans out because it's hard to predict what's going to happen. But yeah, there's a lot more competition. At the same time, everything has gone up. Every artist fee has gone up. Every production price has gone up. Every hire that we do has gone up. Everything's gone up. Everything's become much more expensive. There's a lot more competition. Festivals aren't dropping out in the tens like they are in the UK, because the UK it's absolutely remarkable what's going on there. It's one after another that is throwing in the towel or announcing their last one. Or I just saw another one a couple of days ago. So yeah, that's really crazy to see. I don't think we're at that point yet here in Europe.
You guys didn't vote for Brexit, and we bloody did. So, I think it's Brexit has been, that's what now marks UK a very different economy now to the continent, where, the continent has always been a much more, not always been, but has currently been in this, kind of a much more unified physically, geographically, but also I think there's a shared spirit and stuff. And the UK hasn't always subscribed to that. And Brexit has really kind of consolidated that. So Brexit is, we've created our own hell over here. And it's great to hear that things aren't quite so challenging on the continent. But one thing I have noticed though, and a lot of promoters have told me, is like ticket buying habits have changed a lot, haven't they? So the early birds don't sell quite so well because people are hedging their bets a little bit more, like almost psychologically. We're still carrying this thing from lockdown where we're not, that people aren't sure that an event is going to happen anymore. So people seem to be a lot more last minute in their ticket buying. Is this something that you've noticed with Rampage, or have you got such a tight community that you've got a different economy?
I can't say that I have.
Cool, that's great.
Yeah, I can't say that I have. So one thing that I'd say is that yes, so the early birds, they sell out fast because people are aware of their own budget, and the real hardcore fans, they're gonna want to come anyway. So they want to grab that early bird and save a few bucks. So those sell out fast, and then it kind of drops off for a while. That's true. Like maybe in the past we've had times where tickets just keep selling at kind of like the same pace. Not so much anymore. So yeah, it kind of drops off. I'd say that the big thing now is I think people want to know exactly what they're paying for. So it's like it's fine that we're announcing different acts and different parts of the lineup, and everyone's like, all right, this looks great. Oh, that's great. Oh, interesting. They still want to know what's going to be the exact final bill. They're going to wait for that. And as soon as they know that, also who's coming which day, what, you know, to the point where what kind of accommodation is available. You know, they just want to know every detail, and then they'll decide whether they come or not. And in the past, is maybe a bit more like we'll see how it pans out, kind of thing. You know, we'll get a ticket, and you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And now it's like, yeah, I want to know exactly what I'm in for.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a big thing. I think also, like you said, we kind of lost a little generation of ravers. People 16, 17, 18 years old that didn't really get educated into raving the way that we all were, and now are not necessarily raving or going out to festivals, which is also, it's kind of showing that the average age at our events has gone up. So there's yeah, it's like this. First of all, there's people that haven't raved in 2 years and they want to rave now. So people that are like maybe just in their 20s when lockdown started, and they're now catching up. And, you know, so that means there's more 23, 24, 25-year-olds than we may have had before. And now there's less of the 18, 19 years olds, because they haven't had that education, they had that kickstart into rave culture. So yeah, we kind of see that the average age has gone up at the events, which is also a cool thing, because people are more educated. They've got more. They're more in tune with the culture. Not saying that an 18 or a 19-year-old cannot be, but obviously, if you've been raving for 5, 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, you've had some history. You're part of a community. You know, you know older tunes, all that stuff. So yeah, that's been an interesting part of it as well.
Right.
Yeah,
and
definitely
that's a real difference compared to some like Belgium in itself, and the drum and bass that is probably, you know, if you know your drum and bass, one of the main things that people associate with Belgium is the younger crowds and the jump up sound, you know, beyond Rampage. As you know, like obviously Rampage exists and everybody associates that with Belgium drum and bass. But I always think of very young crowds because the licensing laws are slightly different. And I think that's why kind of Jump Up has become so popular and has its own sound and its own culture and its own movement in Belgium, is because people can go raving and buy tickets from the age of 16, which I think is a difference, you know, kind of marks you out from other countries' cultures in that type of way. So to know that really, I mean, one, that makes Belgium an incredibly healthy place for drum and bass culture. If you've got spaces for slightly older ravers and younger ravers to come in, that is going to create a very healthy culture and an interchange between different age people, really. So that's really interesting to know. And I guess then, but it also means that might be a double-edged sword. If you've got older ravers coming who've got experience and they know what Rampage used to be pre-COVID and stuff, you have to deliver. There's, you know, you always, I mean, you're not going to cut any corners anyway, but you have to deliver. If you're dealing to people who've got history in the game, then they're going to know if that wasn't quite the Rampage that I used to go to in 2018 or something.
Yeah. Well, we don't settle for anything like that anyway, so that's not really a word. That's not really a word.
No, totally. But you're still announcing at time of recording now. You're still announcing the lineup. You're still announcing stage hosts. Like One More Thing, and that must be really interesting from your point of view as a promoter. Then, with every kind of announcement and every collaboration, I guess this is when you start to see your audience, the ticket buyers, kind of starting to mobilize and make plans for the summer. And right now, it's the end of March 2024. This podcast is going to go out probably towards the middle of April. This is when people are starting to make plans for the summer and thinking like, oh shit, it's only a couple of months away. The sun is starting to shine and stuff. Right. Okay. Who's up for what? This is crunch time now, really. And you're gradually painting that kind of picture for fans, telling them what's about to come. And a lot of that seems to be, and I've noticed this having worked with UKF over the years, with obviously a relationship with Let It Roll, sometimes these announcements are out of your hands completely because there are you've got loads of moving cogs within your event, but then the festival world and touring artists and agencies, that bigger universe, is a million moving cogs. So you have to wait for so many different things before you can make these announcements and stuff. It's kind of part of a much bigger machine, isn't it?
Yeah. You don't always make the decisions yourself. Some of the decisions are being made for you. Sometimes that's an issue. Not really right now, fortunately. because we're now March 29th and we're announcing full lineup next week. So the first weekend of April, we'll have the full lineup out there. The issue with the full lineup to me is like every announcement is great content. You know, every announcement you do is great for getting people hyped up and getting people excited and getting people to connect on socials and talk to their friends about it. And as soon as the full lineup is out there, it's like, you know, what's next? You know, what are you going to talk about in the next 3 months? How are you going to keep people excited? So yeah, I try to wait it out for as long as we can.
Obviously, One More Thing is part of those announcements. What I really love and what is the biggest compliment to me is the stage that One More Thing are hosting on the Saturday. It's the alternative stage. It's the kind of, you know, we're the kind of underground or left field side of your curation, really. And that to me means everything. That is exactly what One More Thing represents. Which is why
I thought of you. Because I've seen you pushing certain acts. I've seen you pushing certain sounds. Obviously, Vision Radio. You know, there's a lot of attention for the kind of fringes of the scene where we're in, and there's so much interesting stuff happening. I mean, the return of 140, for example, the renewed interest for UK garage. People experimenting. I mean, people like we mentioned Emmanuel earlier, people like that who are like really on a cross section of different styles of bass music and beyond, really beyond bass music even. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening, and I really get the impression that people that are, even if they are hardcore dubstep or drum and bass, they're still interested in what happens on the edges of that sound.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's why One More Thing exists, is to represent the edges, because without the edges, you know, everybody comes from somewhere, and a lot of people will come in through the mainstream and then find their own sound and broaden. You know, like my first entry point was hard dance and trance, and I still have a soft spot for it now, but I quickly went into very experimental places. But the fringes are some of the most important things I think that you can really have, because that's what feeds the culture, really. So then you've got a much more balanced kind of sonic spectrum, if you like, really.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot more exploring to do even in those areas, and it can be tough getting the right acts to represent those sounds, especially because we're a drum and bass and dubstep festival, and we're regarded as such. So for agents or management teams or even artists that are not really into or not really part of our scene, it kind of sometimes I notice that sometimes it feels alien to them. Being asked to play at a festival like ours, like they don't really see how they fit in, even if we do. So it's something that we kind of slowly have to develop, get a couple of artists that represent those kind of sounds, so we can show people later down the line how successful those moments are at our festival. I remember Hamdi playing last year. And even if he's still full on dubstep, even if it's called 140 or whatever, but it's definitely not the type of like monster sound that we usually have on the big stages, like the broad step, tear out, rhythm type sounds. He does a completely different thing that's much more in tune with like the original dubstep sound coming from the UK, from London. And him just like, the whole backstage emptied out. Everyone wanted to see Hamdi. It was such a vibe, you know. The stage is poured full of people, you know, big vibes. And I mean, that shows that it's not just the really straightforward, full-on dance floor stuff that gets people going, and people are interested in something that's maybe a little more vibier or a little bit more on the outside of the general main thing.
Yeah, I mean, quite often it's the sound. It's a bit like catwalk fashion in a way, where you see people in these crazy get-ups, and then slowly aspects of that will come into everyday fashion. And I think you see that a lot within music as well, where the experimental sounds will then get incorporated by the mainstream. And it's important to have, you know, you can see like what's happening on the experimental stages will often be an echo of what is about to happen on the mainstream stage, but just in a much more kind of extreme, concentrated way. Do you feel a responsibility as a promoter? You know, well, is it? I see it as a responsibility, but I'm not in a position where I'm hosting these huge raves. I'm the person who wants to be supported in that type of way. But is it a responsibility for you? Do you see it as a responsibility and a duty to support the more experimental sides, which aren't, you know, they might not guarantee bums on seats quite as much, but they're just important to have for the culture? It goes beyond a sense of commerce, I think, here, really.
Yeah, yeah. You know, in general, I think that everyone that's really involved in our scene is just part of our scene. Like a lot of like EDM, trance, even like hardstyle kind of events are sometimes just being put on by people that are businessmen or business people. And I don't think you really have that in drum and bass. I think drum and bass, everyone that's like, look at Let It Roll, Liquidity, Worried About Henry, everyone's still grassroots. It's all people that just started out doing it for the love of it, and 10, 20, 30 years down the line are still doing it. So yeah, I think everyone's just very involved and representing different sides of the scene. It just comes natural, I think, to promote like us. Like even, I don't think Let It Roll does that so much, but they push a lot into the harder side of drum and bass. But look at Liquidity, you also have like a machine drum or an LTJ Bookham playing. Also, obviously, LTJ Bookham is a drum and bass DJ, but also way beyond just drum and bass. Like definitely way beyond main stage drum and bass. So yeah, I think it kind of comes natural. That we want to represent every bit of the scene.
I think it is that grassroots, and I think that this does bring us really nicely kind of full circle to the fact that you've been so hands-on up until really, really recently. You know, doing like, you know, whether it's kind of working as members of staff, right, in the earlier days of promoting parties, to, you know, being the front-facing person who's answering all of the questions on social media up until really recently. It's that hands-on aspect which has led to that. Really, it does come from a place of pure passion. It doesn't matter how big it gets, as long as your passion is in it for the right reasons. That is what's going to be the motivational force and the consistency in everything that you do.
I agree.
I mean, do you miss being hands-on in that way, or are you very happy now that you've got a bit more of a team and you can you can be that CEO, bringing us back to the kind of opening kind of question? Right?
Oh yeah,
you can oversee things a bit more, and it's not so intense and in your face every single day, every single action and everything that you do online. You can step back and kind of look at it for the bigger picture.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, because honestly, it was a bit much. It was a bit much doing everything all at once, all the time. It was a bit much. So yeah, I'm very happy. Because like, if you're always occupied with these certain things that are right in front of you, there's no mental space to go beyond any of it. So, and that's the most important thing I think in evolving, you know, building and creating. It's to just have mental space. You kind of have to, you need to have time off. You need to have moments that you're not doing anything for your mind to just come up with something. Like you can do a brainstorm session and that works from time to time, but just have that little light bulb, boom, go up. That just comes out of nowhere, you know? And you need that time off. You need that mental space to let that happen. So that's something that you can do right now, which for some time it was harder doing that. It was harder creating those moments for that, to allow for that to happen.
Yeah, you can't see the wood for the trees because you're just so involved for it, really.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier about having dates planned right up until 2027. So those light bulb moments are now pinging off way into the future. And what can you hint at for the future of Rampage?
It's obviously still very early, but 2025, we're planning something for the winter edition of 2025, lineup wise, that is completely out of the ordinary. Like you mentioned, the the 2020 lineup being very impressive. And I totally agree. And I think we're gonna move towards something like that, but in a 2025 or even beyond type of way. I think the music industry has been gravitating towards dubstep and drum and bass quite a bit in recent times, and we're gonna explore creating a lineup that incorporates some of those elements and bring artists to the stage that you don't really see at drum and bass or dubstep events.
Wow. That's really exciting. The mind boggles at what that could be. And I'm not going to push you for any more of that because we've got Rampage Open Air coming up in the meantime and many other exciting things in the 2024 calendar. But that's really exciting. And the evolution continues, really, doesn't it?
Yes.
And it can't stop.
Very much so. Very much so.
Brilliant. Hans, Murdock, thank you so much. It's been a real journey. I'm really inspiring to learn about the journey and the growth of not just Rampage, but as yourself, this goes much, much further back than 15 years, those grassroots and how you still very much entrenched in them and how the evolution just gets bigger and bigger. It's been really, really interesting. So thank you so much for your time, man.
Thank you.
Excellent. Cool. I'll see you in a field in Antwerp in July.
No doubt you will. No doubt you will.
Brilliant.